Canada is one of the most successful countries in the world. Our country recently turned 150 last year during the 1st of July. But after 150 years, what do we really have as a country and what do we need to improve on? Here are the four major sects that make up the Northern Giant, Canada. Immigration is a big part of Canada. Each year we take about 200,000 immigrants and refugees in our arms. For this, globally, we are acknowledged as the country with open arms. Even now, more and more refugees are coming into our country. About 21% of the Canadian population is immigrants. Most of the immigrants that come to Canada settle in Ontario, Quebec, and BC. Toronto has the highest population of immigrants. A lot of immigrants mean a lot of foreign people, who mostly have no reliable job for the first 6 months to a year. Fortunately, Canada gives child support money if your kids are below the age of 18 in Ontario. But these freebies do result in a higher tax rate. The taxes we pay mostly are used for schools and healthcare. Our problems with the First Nations or the Aboriginals has been here for about as early as Canada itself. First Nations have always been discriminated and looked down upon as a very unsophisticated society. Because of this, they never really got a big say when it came to politics. But now their rights are far better than before. A registered Indian status has many benefits when living in Canada. For example, when an Indian status person is going through secondary or diploma program, they get financial assistance from the government. As of right now, Premier Trudeau is also working on better housing and food supply for the Aboriginals. Even though we have many mistakes when it comes to First Nation treatment, I believe we can form a friendship again like how they tried to form a friendship when the European settlers first came to Canada. Canada has a vast variety of landscape, from grassy plains in Manitoba and Saskatchewan to the Rocky Mountains in British Columbia. Where you settle depends on where you come from and where the best living conditions are for you. Many people settle in areas like Vancouver, Toronto, or Calgary. All these places have their own advantages. For Toronto, it's warm, the lowest being -7 in the winter. It has a high competition in profession jobs such as doctors, engineers, or teachers. Now, because it's located in the St. Lawrence lowlands, there are plenty of forests here. And if you're from Southern Asia, there is a lot of company for you here. Over 27% of Vancouver's population is Chinese. Even though it's more up north than Toronto, it's still warmer than Toronto with the lowest temperature being 2 degrees Celsius in the winter. Calgary is the coldest one out of the three, with the lowest being an average of -13 degrees in winter, but usually the temperatures plummet down to -25 degrees in winter. Aside from the British people, there are a lot of French and Scottish people in Calgary. Those are the three main cities to settle in Canada. In my opinion, Toronto has the best living conditions for me in terms of ethnicity. One of the biggest problems for Canada right now is that we are not good at managing our resources. Canada is one of the most resourceful countries in the world. Most of our land was once home to the biggest fauna in history. This means we have a lot of natural oil due to the animals that had died here in the last ice age and before. We can see this in the oil reservoirs in the tar sands of Alberta. We also have a lot of dense deciduous and coniferous forests. This means we have one of the largest supplies of timber in the world. Most rich countries in the world have an economy based on the natural resource that is found in that area. For example, Russia's natural resources are timber, oil, and other minerals. Australia mainly has uranium, iron, zinc, and most of all gold. Since Canada has only recently found oil in the tar sands about at 1957, we are heavily exploiting this and in process destroying many ecosystems and causing other problems to the First Nation and Aboriginal people. But that's about the worst thing that Canada does in terms of managing their resources. So should we continue mining our oil and cutting down our trees? In my opinion, we should keep harvesting our resources, but only if you find a sustainable solution to the harm that it causes to the environment. For example, when the government cuts down trees, they replant 5 times more than they cut down. And if anyone who doesn't have a license to cut trees down does it, they will get a heavy fine. But as of right now, there is no proper solution to the damage that oil extraction process is causing. So as of right now, we should stop or even slow down our production with the oil sands. Contrary to many beliefs, Canada actually has a history of 10,000 years, with the first humans coming from Russia and northern China by crossing the frozen bridge during the near end of the last ice age. The people that came here mostly settled in the lower parts of Canada because it was relatively warmer. The temperature in the northern parts of Canada during the last ice age would sometimes drop to -100 degrees Celsius. The second oldest settlement in Canada were the Vikings, who had settled from Norway to Canada and Newfoundland about 1,000 years ago. But the most recent settlement that led up to today was by the Europeans who came here in 1614. One of the people that came here with the group was Samuel de Champlain. Since Samuel and his group settled here, Canada has been advancing more and more in terms of urbanism. We have accomplished a lot in the past 400 years, but there is a lot more improvement left for the future. We can start by saying that Canada is very, very dependent on oil. In fact, 3% of the $2.001 trillion economy is from oil. We need to do better. One of the better solutions to this is to use wind power, solar power, and electricity. To become a future city, I think we need to run on no fossil fuel. There is only one country in the world that runs completely without fossil fuel, Sweden. We also need to build better ways to grow crops in winter, maybe use greenhouses more and more, and maybe even build them on top of buildings, save space. Who knows? But we gotta do what we gotta do to make Canada a better place. In conclusion, Canada has a great immigration system, variety of landscape to settle on, and a dire need of change when it comes to managing our resources.